Hello. Hi to my. This is Knit and Knot by the Sea. My name is Catherine and my pronouns are she, her. This is a different video. I'm doing a video about this quilt that I've just finished. I like to do videos so that there is some information for my daughters, for posterity. At some point they'll become interested in what I used to do with my spare time, and I want them to have a record of, the things I was thinking about and the choices I was making. So this is my latest quilt. I'm just going to do it like this for the first bit, and then I will change it because I want you to have a really good look at it. I'm super proud of this quilt. Some of the sort of generic things to tell you about it are that, as always, most of the fabrics are second-hand or repurposed. This fabric here is special because it was the fabric that my daughter-in-law had bought to have her wedding blouse made, very simple wedding blouse, and she also had some of this red fabric left over, and that was from a skirt that she had made for her wedding. So she had a very simple outfit, which looked very lovely. She's very beautiful, so she didn't need big flounces and lace and stuff like that. Yes, I'm really happy with it. I'll start talking about the details and have close-ups so that you can have a proper look. Okay, so as I was saying, all the fabrics are either second-hand. I bought them second-hand for just to have in my craft pantry, or I bought them specifically for this project. For example, this mustard fabric. I was really looking for a mustard fabric, and this was part of a dress. It was linen and viscose, and I don't normally buy viscose because although it's natural, it's quite chemically intensive process, and I don't think it's good for the environment. Even though they're doing things to improve it, it's still, it is much better to do things like use linen. So that was bought specifically for this. This fabric here, a friend of mine from work gave it to me. She had some leftovers, and if you watched, if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen I made some little Christmas pouches for my girls for the little gifts with this fabric, with some embroidery. So it's nice that my daughter-in-law is going to get a project that also has a bit of that fabric. This was a skirt. Oh, in fact, I forgot to say this in Spanish. This was the fabric that I made a skirt for the wedding. So that's nice. Then, nothing special there. This fabric here was from a jacket, a blazer that I bought online. It was linen, very bright. It's actually dulled down quite a lot in New Zealand with the New Zealand sun rays. But I really loved it until it didn't fit me anymore. I like this fabric. I bought it as well for the quilt. I really like that. It was a pair of trousers that were Japanese, and my daughter-in-law is half Japanese, so I thought that was a fun thing to do. I'll show you later. I've got some fabric that's from India, which also is kind of part of her culture because her father, she's half Bangladeshi. Her father is from Bangladesh, so that's kind of cool. What else? Okay, let's start with the details. I'll start by telling you that this quilt was constructed in the method that people normally describe as improv. So not only are you not using a pattern, but you're not pre-planning your quilt. So all I did was I decided that I wanted to use one traditional block, which is something I often do. I'll start from a traditional and then just go off on my own. This quilt pattern with these two interlocking rings is called a double wedding ring pattern. And you'll see from here, it would keep going on. But I just chose to have just two. And normally it's a series of small segments like these. But I was playing around with the design. So I've got some bigger sections. And that's another big section. That's another big section. And then some more little ones. So there's a whole mixture. If you see a color changes because the segment changed into another little segment. What I did is it's an applique style. So this is placed on top of the white fabric. This is placed on top of the white fabric and tacked with tiny little stitches all along the edge. In fact, if I get really near, you might be able to see some of the little stitches. That's not a good part. I did show some earlier where you could see them. I think you can see some stitches there. You can see. I don't know if you're going to be able to see them. Tiny, tiny little stitches to tack it down. Once that was done, then I started doing the quilting itself. I did prioritize quilting the rings first. Once the rings were done, I did the outside of the rings, all the white area, and then I did the inside of the white ring, of the white of the rings. But first of all, I was constructing the quilt. So I started with that white panel, and then I was thinking, okay, that obviously I wanted it to be a sort of bed size, queen size. So after the white panel, I added that sort of 15 centimeter wide green, red, white, mustard, blue. And then after that, I was like, well, it'll have to be wider. So I go to the right, and I found some pieces that I joined together. So these over here, I joined into strips, and then I attached that strip to that white panel. Then I did the same up here. I joined the mustard to that blue, and then I did a strip here. I don't know if you can tell, but the direction of the fabric is, this is one piece of fabric, and then this is another piece of fabric. So I got up to here, joining the mustard with the blue. Then I picked up another blue, and I joined it to this off-white with this strip of blue. And once that was constructed, I joined it to the blue, which was already joined to the mustard. And that's how you keep building the blocks. I don't know if you can see the edge here. I obviously continued adding it up there. At some point, I decided that I needed to make it wider again. So I added this strip on the side, which is a light blue, red, blue, blue, green, mustard, and so on. And that's what I do. I join pieces to pieces, and then I put it on my bed, and I go, oh, okay, I need a bit more here. It's a very organic, very unstructured, very relaxed way of working. I don't use a design wall. I don't have a design wall, and that sort of methodical way of working probably wouldn't suit me. I quite like trying things out on my bed. I like trying to see, you know, what comes out of the bag. I had all my pieces of linen in a bag, and I would just pull things out as I needed them. Or like, oh, I need a bigger piece, etc. Every time I cut something, there's always leftover bits. You know, if you're joining this bit to this bit, depending on what it was used for before, you might end up with a tiny bit here that you didn't need, so you cut it off. And all those bits I used to join this, to make this long strip. And I really like the effect that that created. I think it brings an energy to the quilt, the fact that you've got a mixture of pieces and a mixture of colors. It's quite unexpected. And the same thing happened at the bottom. I quite like how it turned out. For the bias binding, I used some of that blue fabric that I was talking to you about earlier. And I also had some brown that I bought from that waste diversion store that we have in the city, which we're very lucky to have. I did do mitered corners. I rebel against mitered corners because I just think we shouldn't be so fussy. But you'll see what I did at the back, which pleases me. So sometimes what I'll do is, instead of having 4 mitered corners, I will have 3 mitered corners and 1 curve. I like to play around. The other thing you'll notice is that the edges are wavy. Can you see that? They're not actually dead straight. You'll see lots of videos online on how to square up your quilt. I don't think that's necessary. I think the wavy edges are interesting. You'll see, for example, in this fabric strip, this is kind of the length of my thumb, but as we walked down the strip, it gets wider. And I like that. It's interesting. Now on to the quilting. I use big stitch quilting, which is using pearl cotton and a big chunky running stitch. It's my favorite way to quilt. I've no desire to do the 8 stitches per inch that they used to sort of randomly they decided that this was like the desired best way of quilting. I like this, it makes a statement, so I really like it. I made sure to use different patterns. So this one's vertical lines, this one's vertical lines, and this one here I've done horizontal so that there is contrast between them. And this one here actually has a pattern, it's sort of rough diamonds. This one here is quite close together. And this one here I did horizontally but quite far apart. So I do like to play around. You can see here that I did it in diagonal parallel lines, quite close together. This one again was done as a triangle, as a diamond. Difficult to see, but I think the effect's really nice. I'm going to pause the video now so that I can show you the back of the quilt, because I think it's quite beautiful as well, and I want to show you the effect of the quilting. Okay, here's the back. Now those eagle-eyed ones amongst you, you might have noticed that I also noticed just now, I forgot to quilt this little panel here. I started here, you can see some diagonal stitching, and then there is nothing. So I am going to have to quilt this before I give it to my daughter-in-law, but that will take 5 minutes. But I wanted to show you the contrast in the stitching. So quite close stitching here, vertical, and then slightly more spaced out horizontal stitching. This section is what I was telling you that was the diamonds. I think it looks quite funky. Kind of a fun, sort of a little bit different and unexpected. I also wanted to show you the different, the back is, it's not just one length of this pink bed sheet, pink flowered bed sheet, but it is joined sections. And I think it looks really cool. I really like that you can see how different these sections look with the blue stitching there, because obviously there's blue fabric on the other side. I've also used red, I've got white. It just looks nice. It's like quilt archaeology on the back. I really like that. That blue was a second-hand shirt that I bought Martin, and he wore until it was quite threadbare. And so now it lives on in the quilt. It was a particular favorite of mine. I thought he looked really good in this blue. Martin has blue eyes, so he always looks nice when he's got a blue shirt on. And then I also really wanted to show you it's not really a label because I haven't added anything to make a label, but the embroidery that tells a little bit about who's done it. So in Spanish it says, hecho a mano y con cariño para Asuma. Asuma es un nombre, Asuma is a Japanese name, so the U is not pronounced. Catherine Barriga, Waikoaiti, 2023. I try, you might be looking at this thinking, gosh, she's not a very good embroiderer. I really like this style of embroidery. I try really hard. I've been embroidering for so long, not consistently, but I can make very neat stitches, and I find embroidery interesting when it's not neat. I think it just has so much more to tell us. So I work quite hard. I didn't pre-write any of this. I just embroidered, and I tried to make sure that it wasn't dead straight. For example, I'm particularly fond of the S. I think it's fantastic. And I'm particularly fond of the G in my surname. I just think those things are fun. And it's nice to have a bit of fun with your work. I also incorporated some lace that she had for her wedding top, which I think is really beautiful. It looks particularly charming next to the blue fabric, I think. And I really wanted to show you the bias binding. So I use this running stitch. So the running stitch doesn't go all the way to the front. So on the front, it's just plain, but on the back is this running stitch in a contrasting color. I think that's super fun. It looks great. And every so often I would do a back stitch just to reinforce it and make sure it didn't come undone too quickly. I will tell my daughter-in-law to bring it back if it needs mending. And what I'm hoping is that if it does need mending, it will just be patched and that'll look cool. I now have no idea if I talked about this fabric, but this is a top that I found in the second-hand shop that's part of our sort of council recycling scheme. I really like it because it looks, I'm not sure if it's 100% block printed, but it looks like block printed Indian fabric. And you know, India and Pakistan, they used to be the same country, so a lot of their artisans do similar work depending on the areas, but anybody from Pakistan or India or Bangladesh would recognize this sort of fabric. So I thought it would be really lovely to incorporate it. I sacrificed some beautiful Indian fabric for her quilt because I'm sure she will appreciate it. And I think that's it. I did put Margarita off saying don't use bed sheets because it'll be too hard on your hands, but actually this bed sheet, which has got these beautiful vintage roses and some daisies, it was actually super soft. You just have to make sure that the thread count is not too high. So if you're like, I think anything pre-1910, probably too dense, and anything very high quality after 1980 is probably too dense. So, you know, if you're buying bed sheets that are 800 count, that's probably too hard on your hands. But this is, you know, this was a joy. I mean, it's old and it's been washed thousands of times. So that would be part of the story, but it was very easy to quilt. So that's it. My first quilt for my daughter-in-law. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that if you're on the fence about quilting, it will inspire you to do maybe a mini quilt so that you can practice all the different techniques, or you'll just be wild and just jump on and do a big project like this. Quilting is super easy. It's a very accessible craft. So I hope you will be inspired and you'll do something. And please let me know if you do. All right. Have a good rest of your week. Ka kite.